Welcome to the Investor Coaching Show, a podcast to help you get an insider's view of the financial world and escape common investment traps. We look at the financial news of the day and help you make sense of it so you can relax about money. And here's your host, Paul Winkler.
All right, we are back here on the Investor Coaching Show. I'm Paul Winkler. He's Jim Wood. Okay, you get to talk now.
Okay. I was born in Bakersfield, California.
PaulWinkler.com is the website, by the way. You can get all kinds of audio and video and Medicare and Social Security workshops and all kinds of stuff on there, like why aren't we tripping over Wall Street millionaires, all kinds of things out there to check out on the website.
Hours and hours of amazing content.
Amazing stuff. Yes. If I do say so, but I'm not biased. All right, go ahead.
All right. Well, I pulled an article, and it just made me think about so much of the news today is to drive a narrative. Mm-hmm. And that's whether, political things, financial things, and sometimes those two cross a little bit.
And scare people because that attracts people's attention.
Yeah, right. I mean, if you get scared, now I got to follow this.
I got to read this.
I got to know this. And of course, then, that's when they can sell more advertising and all that.
Of course.
But one of the things you hear from an economic standpoint is that we have there's more and more inequality. You got the guy in New York saying that we shouldn't have billionaires. So,
okay, actually that goes against some of the data, but anyway, I'll talk about that later. Go.
Well, yeah, no, that's certainly not my opinion.
No, I mean, but I know,
yeah.
But I'm it's just interesting that they come up with that. You hear that, and it sounds good,
right? And there's lots of people that will say stuff like that. That is just, and it's so much of that just shows how economically illiterate so many of those people are. And they're either so economically illiterate, there's no way they should be in office, or they know and they're just lying. But I didn't get in here to do a political diatribe.
Yeah.
Diatribe. But what I do is just wanted to talk about this because there's so much stuff out there that is intended to mislead you. And when you look at the facts of things like that, then it should make you optimistic long term, thinking because it always goes back to the fact that we live in a world that is getting healthier and wealthier. There are miracles happening every day in technology, in healthcare, in longevity, in every aspect of life. But all we hear is that it's unfair because Elon has a lot of money.
Yeah, Jim, I was teaching a workshop down in Cool Springs about this, and I went through, child mortality, that's going down. I looked at life expectancies going up. I looked at income of middle class. Actually, the middle class is shrinking, but it's not shrinking for the reasons that we might think. They're actually going to the upper class is what they showed in the research. There was data on, what else was it? It was, women. Another one was women in the workforce that was something that was going up. And there were just a lot of different things that I went through. And I said, in every area, and the point that I was trying to make when I was teaching this was that as an investor, you get to participate in the growth of capitalism all around the world, and capitalism has been spreading. And it's because what's happening is other countries around the world are going, we want what those guys have. In other words, the United States. They've been looking at us and going, we want what they have. I don't know if you saw this, but the whole thing that was happening in Europe with Great Britain, you had the immigration overrun. And I thought it was interesting. The Economist actually talked about that. And he says, hey, you know what they're cutting back on, or they're actually reducing the amount of illegal immigration and nobody's noticing. I thought that was interesting. What an interesting headline. But the idea being that they were saying, hey, this has been an issue with us. Maybe we ought to get a hold on this because it's negatively affecting our bottom line as a country. So I think that what happens, this stuff goes in cycles.
Yeah, and one of the things that people don't think of too is that from a global standpoint, like to your point, that things are getting better, and it's the poorest countries that are doing the best in general. If they allow themselves the chance, I mean, there's certain countries that just won't participate. Right? North Korea is never going to go anywhere under its current regime. But if countries are trying, they will get help, they will get investment, and they will have opportunities. And those are the places where you're making the most gains. The statistic I like to look at or talk about is when you and I were young, then there was about.
Are you saying I'm not young anymore? I'm just asking.
Well, you're younger than me, just barely, but we'll say you're young. That there was 50% of the world's population lived below the poverty line, and now that number is 1/5, so 15%. And actually, I think it's even down to maybe 13%.
Oh yeah,
like
what
that.
an interesting stat. Yeah, that's something. You just think about that. Wow, poverty has been little by little, and what created that?
And so the point is when they throw all these horrible things at you, like, oh, inequality is so bad, there shouldn't be billionaires and all this, and it's misdirection. It's taking your eye off the ball. What we want long term are companies that have proper incentives, meaning to grow their companies, create new products, which make everybody's life better. And those things, when that stuff happens, everybody benefits. There's jobs, the economy grows, all the things that we want to happen. So that's really why I wanted to talk about this.
Yeah, and so some of this stuff resonates with people just simply because right now we're in this period of time where people are, they're borrowing more, and they feel like they're strapped. Is just what I've seen. Matter of fact, there was this. Check out this data that I heard on CNBC this week. It was mind blowing.
Well, if it's not luxury, who's spending $1,000 a month for an auto loan payment? Well, primarily it's people who are buying pickup trucks. Now, there may be some contractors in there, some small business owners, and they can write off some of that as a business expense. But there's clearly people who are spending a lot of money on full SUVs, mid-size SUVs, and pickup trucks. It's 75% of the auto loans with $1,000 or more monthly payment.
I just stopped right there. That blew me away when he said that. A car payment of $1,000 per month. Just let that sink in. And if you're one of those people with 1,000, this is something that I'm always telling people, this is something you don't borrow for. Don't borrow for depreciating items. And if you can't get there yet, just do your best to get to the point where you don't borrow for depreciating items. There's a thought process out there with some people that debt is always bad, that you never have debt. And as I like one of my friends puts it this way, he goes, if you believe that debt is always bad, never should have it, and you have a savings account, you're enabling somebody to be in debt. So kind of perish that thought. But typically what I want to do is I want to avoid debt on depreciating items, things that go down in value. So if something's appreciating, like your home, or maybe for education purposes, or maybe business purposes, that's where I'm okay with that. But just getting my mind wrapped around the $1,000 a month, I was like, whoa.
By the way, the average monthly payment for all vehicles has now hit an all-time high of $770. As you take a look at GM, Ford, and Toyota, we should also point out that the average amount borrowed, no surprise here, as the amount of the price for vehicles continues to climb, the amount borrowed now is almost $44,000. Guys, that is also another record high.
And so what is contributing to that? Have you thought anything about what, Jim, is contributing to people borrowing more and more people getting into debt? Just where's this coming from, from in your mind?
Well, I think the lack of savings and wanting to keep up with the Joneses sometimes. I mean, if you're not savings, then you're going to have to borrow and say, well, boy, I sure like my neighbor's truck. I wish I had that truck. And so you go down and talk to the dealership, said, hey, we'll fix you up.
Yeah.
We got this nice.
We call that the enigmatic circle of wealth.
Yeah.
And it's the idea that I have needs. I need air, food, water, clothing, shelter. I need transportation. I need shelter. I need a house, roof over my head. But, as we've talked about here on the show before, people are living in much larger houses than they used to. Back when, I was growing up, it wasn't unusual. Most of my friends lived in homes that were less than 1,000 square feet. So we've talked about that before. The other thing is that we drove vehicles that were beaters. I mean, we fixed them up ourselves, right? And I think that's one of the problems. You think about it, you can't fix your vehicle vehicles yourself
No.
anymore. That's kind of a difficult thing.
Nobody has that type of equipment, or very few anyway.
Oh,
and I'm
sure,
not, and to the point, we're not vilifying people for buying nice cars, nice trucks. I mean, by all means,
Sure.
Enjoy yourself, work hard for your money, and do that. It always goes back to doing proper analysis of your personal situation, and what works within my budget in terms of something to enjoy today and pay for today, and how does this affect me long term. If I'm paying $1,000 a month for a car, then does that not leave me any money to fund my Roth IRA? So maybe it's better to buy the used car and put the $300 a month away, something like that. That's the way to approach those decisions.
And then when I was talking about the enigmatic circle of wealth, what I was talking about is this, we call it a cycle that we go through, and it's driven by psychology. A lot of it is, I have a need. Then it becomes a want. I need transportation, but I want a really, really nice car. Because like Jim said, I see my neighbor driving a super, super nice car. And then what happens, I get that thing, I obtain it. I'm pretty excited. I'm exuberant. I'm all excited about this new thing. And I remember when I was in college buying my first new car. I remember I'd be in the parking lot at the university, and I'd be turning around and be looking back at my vehicle and going, oh, wow, that's really nice. And getting people to say, hey, look, Paul made it, even though I was in college. How could I have made it? Right. But it is something in our psyche that wants to be connecting with other people is really what happens. Why did I want a really super nice car? Why do we want a super nice house? Why do we want super nice clothes? Typically, there's something behind it, and it's that desire to connect with other people. And one of the things that we like to point out is if somebody isn't there yet, you can connect with other people, and it doesn't have to cost a thing. I can go spend some time with a friend. Matter of fact, I told a friend of mine, that I'm going to go do something for them this afternoon. And she was just, they play music together, and I'm just going to go do some stuff, take some pictures. And she was ecstatic. What's it going to cost me to go do that? The gas to get there and back? No big deal. But, the reality is so much of what we need to do or what we have to spend to connect with people is nothing. That what we do often is we try to live above our means to make it look like we're more successful than they are. And what is it? Is it because we don't feel great about ourselves or whatever? What's the psychology behind it? There was an article in the Wall Street Journal about this very thing. And it was talking about how Americans are falling behind on their $1.25 trillion credit card bills. Literally, they're falling behind on this stuff. And what got my attention was the first person that they focused on in this article. They said, after working all day as an operations director for a busy New England hospital, her name's in an article in the Wall Street Journal, I might as well say it. Catherine Clark would lie awake at night wondering where she went wrong. Despite her, get this, Jim, $194,000 salary. You can't make this stuff up. Clark's Chase Sapphire credit card balance had crept up to $15,000. She could afford the $572 monthly minimum, but with a 26% interest rate.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, 26% interest rate. I mean, what is that? Your debt doubles every few years, pretty much at that rate of interest. You basically bought things twice, is what I'm saying. Like many Americans, Clark, who's 42 years old, was pushed to her financial limit by a 1-2 punch of inflation and the highest interest rate in decades. Now, let me just push back on that a little bit, because a couple of years ago, when I started talking about credit card debt, the interest rate was about 21%. And now it's, 26%. Is it higher? Yeah, it is. But that's not the problem here. The problem is spending way the heck beyond her means.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just the whole thing is, whatever she bought. Now, people have stuff and, okay, I have to buy this medicine or my son's going to die. Mm-hmm. There are those stories out there.
Absolutely. Yes.
But in general, most of the people that get there because, well, I don't want to disappoint the family on a vacation,
Yeah.
or I'm just going to buy this and then I'll pay it off. But, then something else comes up. Then there's always I intend to pay this off. I'm going to do it. But then something else happens and everything. And it just
Right.
snowballs. You got to get rid of that stuff. That's one of the most freeing things out there, is to pay off your credit cards every month. Don't use them, or pay them off every month, and not, just to think that 26%, and if she's got 15,000 and can't afford to knock that out over a few months, the amount of interest she's going to pay is just a nightmarish amount.
Yeah, especially with about a $200,000 salary. So what do we do? Now, typically what I'll have people do, is, especially when they're first starting out, I might even bank draft, let's say, a payment into a savings account. I want to make it into a discipline. So what I'll do is say, okay, let's set up a separate savings account. That's going to be your emergency fund. I might have another account over here that might be, let's say, for your next car purchase, or whatever it is that you might go into debt for, or for, whatever it is, what big ticket item, maybe a trip to someplace or something like that. But typically what I'll do is I'll have people bank draft money into these accounts, make it a discipline, make it a habit, because what typically happens is this: if we save first, and then we spend what's left over, as long as we have saved first, we typically don't miss. We'll learn to live at a lower level. And the reason that works is because we typically we won't miss it. It'll be something that's gone. The money's gone out of the paycheck. And then I figure out how to live on whatever's left. But that's really critical, because when these emergencies come up, when you have a job loss, when you have a need for a car, or you need to have a new air conditioning unit, or, whatever it is that may come up, having, typically you'll hear people say 3 to 6 months worth of spending. When people get older, I might have a little bit more than that. Sometimes I'll have people in their 60s and 70s, they might have a year's worth of spending sitting in savings. But if you can get to the point where you just make it a habit to save and make it an automatic bill where you pay yourself first, that gets you out of this mess right here. So I just want to spend a little time on that. Hey, just a note to you podcast folks, we just came out with a retirement income guide, and I'm super excited about this. There are all kinds of myths about taking income in retirement. People worry about running out of money, and rightfully so, because a lot of these myths can actually cause that. Now, the myths that you typically hear about: number one, dividends, living off dividends in retirement. Real estate, life insurance as a retirement investment, and annuities, and interest-bearing accounts, and target date funds. There are all kinds of things out there. What I want to do is put something together that walks through why those things are problematic, number one. Number two, the other thing that I wanted to do is walk through the evidence-based research on taking income in retirement. And we got a ton of data going all the way back to 1900. What's the logic behind it? And it's intensely logical. So we put that together, and all you have to do to download that, making it super simple, just go to paulwinkler.com/relax, and you can actually get into that very easily right there. So I would urge you to do that. Check it out, because I think you're going to really like it. paulwinkler.com/relax. All right, we're back here on the Investor Coaching Show. I am Paul Winkler. He's Jim Wood. We're talking money and investing. And, sometimes, let me just kind of follow up on what we were just talking about real quickly, Jim, because sometimes you hear a person with $190-something thousand of income ends up in debt. And, the reality of it is people have incomes that are all over the place. And I always hearken back to that book, The Richest Man in Babylon, where the guy points out, he says, do you guys all earn the same income? And they're going, no, how can we do different jobs? And he says, well, how is it that people making $30,000, people making $40,000, people making $50,000 or $200,000 like this person end up in the same position where they have nothing left over? If you make $40,000, act like you're making $35,000 in the way you live. Somehow or other, that person making $35,000 figured out how to make it. Because I remember back before, and this is, I guess I have room to talk here. I remember when my son was first born, 1997, and then 1998, 1999, my income was incredibly low. It was under $20,000 a year, which was it's just about poverty level. But somehow I was saving money even back then, just because I had read that book, The Richest Man in Babylon. So I found some way somehow to get through, get by.
And that's what I think the answer is in a lot of cases, is find that some way, somehow. Doesn't mean you're always looking for a better job. You are working 2 jobs. If you have a 9 to 5, okay, go get a job, on the weekends, serving coffee or something, until you get yourself in a place, get that debt paid off, get yourself in that better position. You have to do what you have to do. Wishing, feeling, like you're stuck or anything like that's not going to help you. You got to take action and do whatever it takes. And it's hard sometimes. You got a family, you got other responsibilities, or you're just beat. It's easy to say you should go do this and everything, but I think that's the mindset, is I'm going to do whatever it takes to get myself into a better place.
Yeah, and there are always extenuating circumstances where it's difficult for somebody to do something like that. But I think that is such a critical thing, is that so often the people that I've heard complaining the loudest are the ones that they're going out and going out to eat. And my wife and I never did. We never did that. We didn't have new cars. We had, oh my goodness, our cars were terrible. I had to change my own brakes. And I would change my own brakes. I'd change my own oil. And yeah, it was rough. I mean, I look back at those days, and it was character building, but it was very, very difficult.
Yeah, I put myself through school working 3 different jobs at one point. Going to 3 different restaurants and, whatever I know it was like 3 different things or 2 different things. And it's just what I had to do to get through school. And that's what you do. You do
you just
what
give me
it
bad
takes.
flashbacks. I remember working at restaurants.
Yeah. I thought restaurants were great because you
liked
make tips.
it. Yeah, to each his own. That was it. There was just I remember being a dishwasher.
Yeah, and some of my best friends were the people we worked with too. I recommend that for all young people.
Yeah.
Or sometimes even otherwise. If great job, you get your wages plus you can make tips. Not a bad deal.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I think that's just critical, is getting yourself to the mindset and just recognizing that it doesn't have to be a permanent condition. Once you start saving, there's some interesting psychology behind that. Once you start putting some money aside and doing something, taking the very first step, it's just like anything else that you might do. Let's say that you're going to do some kind of a job, you got some kind of big project in front of you. Typically just taking small steps. I like in cognitive behavioral therapy, they talk a lot about this. If you have a job in front of you, you're like, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. They'll say, do this for 5 minutes. Just commit for 5 minutes. You're going to start to clean the room. Commit for 5 minutes that you're going to work on the yard, or commit for 5 minutes you're going to go out there and start to look for some kind of work someplace. And what typically happens is that mentally, once we just start the task, which is the hardest thing to do, we will typically continue on. We will actually go on and finish the task. So that's one of the things that I find to be helpful, is just how does the brain work? We think that our feeling is going to come and then we're going to take action, when quite often the way the mind works is you take action and the feelings come afterward. That's the interesting thing about how our brains tend to work, and just taking advantage of that can be super helpful. Did you ever have that situation where you were just like going, I don't feel like doing something?
Well, I think everybody has that at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just,
that would make you normal.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to overcome, and sometimes you just have to take that first baby step.
Hey, this is Paul Winkler. Hope you enjoyed today's edition of the Investor Coaching Show. If you want to learn more about what we do, go to our website, paulwinkler.com. Until next time, I'm Paul Winkler, reminding you that I believe that more educated investors are more confident investors, and confident investors are more successful investors. Have a great one. Advisory services offered through Paul Winkler, Inc., an SEC-registered investment advisor. The opinions voiced and information provided in this material are for general informational purposes only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine what investments are appropriate for you, please consult with a financial advisor. Paul Winkler, Inc. does not provide tax or legal advice. Please consult your tax or legal advisor regarding your particular situation.